We need to go back to Egypt again and again and again and again and again and again until we've knocked down this border between Egypt and Gaza. The problem is not the Israeli assault. The problem is the siege. That's the real problem that's killing the Palestinian people. And let's analyze that siege. I told you earlier, I was all my life with Arafat, and I'm still with his line today. I'm not a supporter of Hamas. I've never been a supporter of Hamas, but I am a supporter of democracy. And the only people entitled to choose the government of Palestine are the Palestinian people themselves, nobody else. Nobody in Washington, nobody in London, still less in Tel Aviv, is entitled to choose the leadership of the Palestinian people. But that's exactly why the siege was imposed. You know, we talk about democracy, exporting democracy, invading countries to impose democracy, Israel claiming to be a democracy. Well, the Palestinians already had a democracy. They had an election. It's the only free election ever held in any Arab country, ever in history. The trouble was London and Washington and Tel Aviv didn't like the result. So they decided to starve people to death, to punish them, to hold the whole people hostage until they rolled over and cried, "Uncle." What kind of democracy is that? This murderous siege is what has to be ended. That's why I'm going to lead convoys to the Rafah crossing point from Britain, from the United States, later in the summer, from Venezuela, the Hugo Chavez Viva Palestina blockade-busting convoy will leave. I'm going to lead one from Russia. I'm going to lead one from China. We're going to lead convoys every month to Rafah until we've opened this gate once and for all so that this siege is empty and over. Which brings me to the real point of my time now in the United States. I promised the people in Gaza, some of whom are eating from the garbage heaps. You have to know this. Every morning I watched women, always women, climbing on the garbage heaps looking for food. The 61,000 people whose homes were destroyed cannot rebuild them because not a brick, not a piece of wood, not a hammer, not a nail, not a sheet of glass is permitted under this siege to cross the border. They're still living outside. This siege is the one that has to be broken. And I promised the Palestinian people in Gaza that I would come to the United States of America and I would organize a convoy of hundreds of American vehicles flying American flags, and that they too would break the siege of Gaza. They too would drive through this checkpoint at Rafah. That's why I launched last month in California, Viva Palestina US. And that's what we are going to do on the 4th of July. When else? American Independence Day. Ron Kovic, the Vietnam War veteran, on whose life, born on the 4th of July, was made. He's not Tom Cruise. He's a bigger star than Tom Cruise, I tell you. We're going to lead from the United States on the 4th of July a convoy of those hundreds of vehicles that will break that siege. Now, how will it happen? You have an easier job than me. I had to drive all the way. You can't. Here's how it's going to work. Anyone who can raise the amount of money required to buy a vehicle in Egypt will fly with us in a chartered plane, I hope 2 charter planes or 3 charter planes from Egypt Air. We will leave JFK in New York on the 4th of July. We'll fly to Cairo. We'll buy vehicles in Egypt. We'll fill those vehicles with aid that we buy in Egypt. We'll put American flags on the front of the vehicles, and we'll drive to Rafah. And I promise you this, when President Mubarak sees hundreds of American flags heading for Rafah, he's going to move out of the way and he's going to open that door. I promise you that. And we're not going to break any US laws either. I know it's difficult here, more difficult than in England or elsewhere. The aid will be handed to non-government organizations, charities, churches, universities, hospitals, impeccable, non-political recipients of a humanitarian aid convoy. You won't get into any trouble by joining us on that convoy. I believe that this is an important turning point. I believe it because I think Israel spent much of its remaining political capital in the world in the murderous bombardment of Gaza during those 22 days, which achieved nothing, didn't even get the criminals who did it re-elected. I believe that the United States now has a government which can see things more clearly. I know that Barack Hussein Obama has many pressures upon him. I know that if we leave him alone, he will not change. There are many others, many other forces seeking to keep American policy as it is. But I believe that President Obama is the most clever president you've ever had. The last guy, you see, the last guy had the excuse that he was an idiot, an imbecile. President Obama does not have that excuse. President Obama has sat at the feet of Professor Edward Said. President Obama knows the truth. And he knows something else, that if American policy towards that region remains the same, then nothing will change in relation to America's problems in the world. Because Palestine is the heart of the matter. Palestine is the key to the crisis between the West and the East. It's the key to the crisis between the Muslim world and the non-Muslim world. And all we are asking for is an American government to pursue a policy in the interests of the people of the United States of America towards the Middle East. That's all. We're asking for a policy in the interests of the people of the United States, rather than the exploiters and the arms manufacturers and the occupiers of Palestinian land. That's the change that we are asking for. And I promise you, if we can make that change, then the hatred of your country and mine, which has been growing and has been mutating in that swamp these last years, will begin to diminish. So, there can be no peace without justice. No justice, no peace. It's a very simple slogan. And the beginning of that justice is to lift the siege on Gaza, to recognize the political leaders of the Palestinian people, all of them, not the ones you like, not the ones you would prefer to talk to, but the ones who represent the people of Palestine.